challenges that we face entering a world where role models are not there. So I would just add that there are always people who will learn something faster. And the school system tends to reward that and call those people smart, and they might get a higher grade. But in the end, that's not what matters. What matters is your motivation to ultimately learn what you need to learn. If it takes you longer to learn it, and longer than the time before you tested on it, takes you a little longer, so what? It took you a little longer. If you get there and your ambition takes you and your interest, then ultimately that's what will dominate what you want as a participant in the research frontier. Not how quickly you learn a problem set on an exam in high school or college. So ambition is something that tests hardly ever test before. And that's what you need, and that's what you need confidence in.
Yeah, and just being able to stick to something.
Yeah.
Just having the grit. I mean, when I got to college, I got placed in remedial math. I mean, I came from a public school system that didn't have a whole lot of math. And I knew I could not get space out of my head. I was so fascinated by it, and I am so glad I stuck in. I was thinking, geez, I just don't have the time for this.
And that became the driver. That was your source of energy to pursue.
Yes.
Yeah. And I like your language analogy because no one will ever say, "Oh, you're not smart enough to learn Spanish." No one will ever say that. They just say, "Are you committed enough to learn Spanish?" And you learn a little bit today, a little bit next week, and next month, and eventually you wake up and you're just talking fluent Spanish, you know. And everyone can learn, and I think that's also true with math as a language.
Yes.
Well, let me add, Alyssa, that as a product of Philadelphia public schools, there's always comedy. All right.
So, Chuck, we only actually had time for that one last question, but that was a really good one. This episode. So, Michelle, thank you for being a guest on Star Talk.
Hey, I'm always here.
And where are you based right now?
Right now I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Whoa! Is that where you're based?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, we will make sure to find you again because you're a delight to share in our answers here and to get your perspectives on the state of science in America. Chuck, always good to have you, man.
Always a pleasure.
These are fan favorites, these cosmic queries, and we delight in the questions that we receive. And keep them coming. But you have to be a member of the Patreon.
Yes, but it's only $5. That's it. $5 a month. And I gotta tell you, that's less than what the budget of NASA is.
All right. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, professor of natural physicists. As always, I think to keep looking at some people don't know that boundary between skepticism is healthy and when it's choosable.
I mean, there are people who just sort of contrarian by nature. I'm just going to doubt everything just
Yes, what the hell is the one? I doubt it, right?
Yeah. Back in the 90s when postmodernism was big, and there is no real truth. Any kind of claim that anybody makes, we should doubt it. To be fair, on the right, there's also the fake news, alternative facts, all this stuff. You can't trust the media.
Here's the deal. They may sometimes get it wrong, but your dumbass always gets it wrong. That you know.
This is Star Talk, a special edition, which means we got Gary O'Reilly right here next to me. Gary? Yes? Love having you. Yeah. Chuck, how you doing, man? Doing great. So, you hooked up an episode, you producer, hooked up an episode today that, oh my gosh, this is an eternal subject. Check us out.
Now, yes, right? So apparently it's trust. Do you trust
trust until
Everyone trusts me. I'm the most trusted person that you'll ever meet. I make up the truth.
Is it noise? Is it biased? Is it fake news? Are they alternative facts? Let's think for a second. We actually assemble truth differently. For, say, science, history, politics, even religion. How about the way things are aliens? What if there was a toolbox of sorts that could help you build skill sets that get you closer to
Instead of the fake truth, the true truth. Okay.
so then I think it's been
All right. Well, I'm delighted and honored to bring in someone I can claim as a friend for decades. He's the one and only Michael Sherman. Michael, welcome back to Star Trek.
Nice to see you all. We need to go back to a previous life.
Oh, that's a different episode. And welcome to my office here.
Thank you.
And you're author of dozens of books, each one trying to get people to think straight in a different way. You are founder of the Skeptic Society, is that correct? And there's a magazine called The Skeptic. Yes. Sensibly titled. That's the focus.
As I like to call it, fake news.
So, and you are also the host of Music Origin. You're also host of the Michael Sherman podcast. And how'd you come up with that name? And your latest work, oh my gosh, this could have almost written itself in the time and place that this needs to appear. It's just called Truth.
And that is an business title. I
And
mean,
no, it's a problem. The real problem is that this book is unnecessary. Who would have thought?
you know, yeah. I mean, in this day and age, it's far more necessary.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm sad that you guys learned to get it right.
Thank you. Yes, well, that's the problem. So I start with the idea that there is no truth in the people's truth world, which the moment somebody opens their mouth and says that, it can't be true because they're making an argument, which is particular true.
So, stay in the deep end. Go ahead. Can we start it in?
I mean, my man is like he's standing in the square and he's just like,
Yeah, okay. Can we unpack what you just said?
yeah, man.
Well, so there's people, fake news, alternative facts, or postmodernism. There is no truth. My truth is as good as your truth. Scientific truths are just a non-narrative, just another story like anybody else's story. These are nothing special. This is what people assume. Okay? So we counter that. These are the so-called science wars. We counter that by saying, actually, there are objective truths that we can get at. Here are the methods we have. That's chapters 2, 3, 4. On how to get there.
Well, all right, so
Wait, I'm sorry, let's read this right there. Can you define objective truth? Because if we don't do that right now, then everything else we say is kind of
let's do that right now.
it's really kind of flimsy.
Something confirmed to such an extent it would be reasonable to offer provisional assent.
Something confirmed to such
The degree.
a degree that it would be reasonable to offer
Our provisional assent.
our
So
provisional
provisional. It cannot
That's the
be.
key word
It
today.
could be wrong. I could be wrong.
That word's kind of a lot lifted like
I know. So I start with the premise that whether there's a God or not, I know for sure it's not me and it's not you. You, sorry. So how do I start? Sorry.
Wait, how do you know it's not any of this?
Well, because we're all, it starts with fallibilism. We're all could be wrong about everything. So we start with the idea that I may have my personal truth, but I might be wrong. So I need to ask you to double check for me. If I think I believe X, can you look and double check for me to see if I'm hallucinating? How many people do you see? Almost nobody because when I wrote the book. You're scientists,
Yeah, we do.
but you're trained in
And it's something called digesting. You check this. Did I make it there? You double check my calculations.
You go get your haters.
Yeah,
It's got a peer review.
ideally,
You get your haters and they come in and they go, yeah, this is bullshit.
So you remember Carl Sagan's dragon in my garage?
I heard it, but I was never able to do so.
Okay, I'll pretend you said there's a dragon in my garage. Would you like to see it? suit. So I take it to the garage, I open it up, I look in, there's some bicycles, 8 cans and a ladder. You don't see any dragon. I go, well, it's an invisible dragon. Oh, okay. How about we sprinkle some flour on the floor and catch the footprints of the dragon walking around? Well, you see, this is an invisible levitating dragon that hovers above the ground about a foot. All right, how about we get one of those thermometers they use in COVID where you point it at his forehead, temperature will see the outline of the dragon walking around with it. No, this is a cold-blooded dragon. How about the fire?
But just to be clear, you're cold-blooded, you are the temperature of the fire.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have cold blood, they just don't maintain. They don't create their own blood. So they create a stick on the short one against red cap.
That's right. Or the fire is cold fire. What's the difference between an invisible, levitating, cold-blooded, cold fire-breathing dragon and no dragon at all? And you can't say, well, I feel the presence of the dragon. Or I feel the love of the dragon. That's all fine for you personally, but at some point, for us to believe exactly a dragon, we gotta have some evidence. And that's science.
By the way, Mike, like just go on Reddit and say, an old black man comes to me and says, there's a dragon in my garage, would you like to see it? I'd probably
That's how you respond. Suppose you were so careful, so you were so articulate, sure, that anyone who would speak of this dragon and to feel the presence of the dragon just out of the power of suggestion, why doesn't that then constitute evidence? Because that's how you get cults.
Yes.
All the people in the cult feel what the leader of the cult feels. Why doesn't that constitute a certain kind of evidence?
So for science, we need external validation of your internal state. So maybe you do feel it's fine, that's your truth, but for me to believe it, I need to have some external validation. So if I take ayahuasca and I realize and I tell you, oh my God, this is full of the spirit world, I saw the entities that were floating out there, here's the color, I felt the love, and so on, you go, show me the evidence, and I go, here, you take the ayahuasca, and you'll see it too. That's still in your brain, it's still an internal truth. You need to have some measure of it.
I suppose that it does that you with this, but you just, I've actually experienced that with ayahuasca. You did it. Oh my God, it was amazing.
Right.
And
When you thought of that,
Did you feel like there really is some voice?
it's more than a feeling. That's why people are so incredibly passionate. Because
just to be clear, you took it in a very controlled,
very controlled
setting,
in a place where they have medical staff on board.
And well, if I come back with a deal, I was wrong. There is this other spirit world.
You might say that there's a possibility that there's a spirit world that somehow in the altered consciousness we're able to tap into it, but we can't do it otherwise. You might say that, but the truth is, everything that the entire time that I was going through, and you're not hollow. That's the misconception. You're not hollow, okay? But as you're in this altered state, the only thing I kept saying as I was looking at beings who were in front of me, it wasn't like a hallucination, whatever. They're there. To me, they're there. But I knew they weren't there. And I kept saying, these are artifacts of my mind making. I kept telling myself that. But my mind, through this experience, revealed to me was so deep and so useful that it felt like this couldn't have come from me. But I know for a fact that it had to come from me, okay? Because
you're rational.
I'm rationalizing. You're absolutely right. I'm
But someone's less rational than you. It's a whole other thing.
oh my goodness, you're all right. By the way, it still exists as that for me as well. Because it's so real. Like I said, it's more than a feeling. It's a connection that feels completely external. But guess what? I know for a fact that it's coming from my brain.
So Michael, getting back to the dragon in the garage, with a charismatic cult leader, one by one, people are drawn in, and for them, the evidence is that they feel it. So at some point, you need someone who's not swayed by the charisma of the leader. Then we count it as an outside reference.
That's why there's no point in the outside.
That's right. Yeah. Or you need a device.
That's why they're
Or, yeah,
Or you need a device.
Well, if I could just say, simply by your experience, in my model of truth, there there is a realm of personal truths that are true for you that do make a difference in your life. When somebody says, I found Jesus or God or whatever and it changed my life, I'm not saying you should believe, I'm not saying I can prove it. I'm just saying this is what worked for me. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Especially if it changes for the better.
Yeah,
Yes, what Chuck was describing was experience. This is the truth you want.
well, a little bit, but that was like comparison, reform, or political. So I think this is more general. Yeah.
Is that the truth that you personally believe and want to be?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, there's an extra step there. I would really like this to be true, and I'm going to find the evidence for it. That's not helpful. This is slightly different. Again, I think if there's experiences you have that change, or people have near-death experiences, do they really go to heaven? Probably not. But it changed their life. Now they're doing this and that instead of doing this. Okay.
Yeah. And I will say, and I'm going to get off the ayahuasca thing because this is not what we're about, but the biggest benefit to me was I was on several neurotransmitter medications, and I was able to come off all of them under the supervision of my psychiatrist. It was like, hey man, I don't know what to say. Like, we don't have these answers in neuroscience right now, but clearly something happened, and I haven't taken them since. So that's,
I would like scientists to be more open-minded. They tend to be pretty dogmatic in scheduling that. I think we need to keep the door open to those kinds of experiences, just in case.
But part of skepticism is if you're a betting person, most of such claims pan out. And so if a scientist actually took time, you're going to say, well, investigate this because it surely works. But we're just being line of people making exactly the same suggestion to a scientist. So
Back to the planets.
yeah.
You've got a sort of deception of a false narrative. But are we programmed to self-deceive in the way that we consume the truth that may or may not be?
That's because you started saying there's the truth you want to be so, and then you look for evidence to support. A good scientist would certainly want their hypothesis to be correct. But a good scientist will try to find ways to show that it's not.
That's right.
It's two very different ends.
If you don't find the flaws in your research, somebody else will. Get with Brinkley and they'll publish it. So the whole development of science is to get around those issues. Our brains are more like lawyers than scientists. We want to win the case for our side, not find out what's actually true. So that's what
Streaming on July 23rd, Star Trek Strange New Worlds returns with a brand new season exclusively on Paramount Plus. Get ready to boldly go one step closer to where it all began as Captain Christopher Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise embark on thrilling new adventures across the galaxy. As they journey the strange new worlds, they battle inner demons and external threats, encounter colorful new characters, and reunite with familiar faces. Don't miss the brand new season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, streaming on July 23rd exclusively on Paramount Plus. Is there a dedicated standard construction of a trip where you can just dedicate? I don't know that means. Identicate.
Identicate. So you get identicate. The truth has to have this. It's how you structure it. Yeah. Is that a standard?
well, there's tools we use, correlation and randomized controlled trials and these sorts of things that exist for things. That science developed over the last century and a half or so to see
How about as an individual rather than as a scientist?
individually we're more subject to this motivated reasoning. I want this to be true, and I'm going to just collect all the evidence that confirms it, ignore the evidence that disconfirms it. Never actually does it. Everybody does it.
Motivated reason with friends.
We're motivated to find what we already want to be true. We had evidence for it. And
And
that's
at some point, can you really fault people? Subject to the whims of our emotions
and also
and our desires.
we have to trust our institutions and well, because you can you don't have to, but you can fact check everything. Right? I mean, I never saw the Chinese spy balloon with my own eyes, but I accept the high resolution photograph. There was the jet shooting it down. It was on all the news. The president, the Secretary of Defense, they all said it's real. By contrast, the UFO videos are always grainy and blurry. You can't quite make it out. No one will confirm it. It's all like, oh, it's classified, we can't show you. That's very different.
That's two different examples of because the large one has a level of evidence that doesn't leave you skeptical of the claim. Because the images of the tribal were pretty high resolution.
Yeah.
You can see.
So what do you do with the, I'll call it, trust of the masses, where so many people lose, but the thing that they believe is still wrong?
Yeah, so
My side bias.
yeah,
My side bias.
Yeah, that's exactly
What
right.
is my side bias?
My religion is right, my political party is right. Keep on going.
The Trump spirit is in that part. That's the first time anybody's ever treated Trump. You don't summon Trump.
He's a channel. So yeah, I mean, the levels of trust the public has in scientific institutions, medical institutions, and the academy universities has plummeted to an all-time low at this point. This is a problem. So we think that's one of the reasons I wrote this book was like, hey, these institutions actually work pretty well. They usually get it right. Sometimes they're wrong. I would prefer our institutions to couch their recommendations in more probabilistic. But right now, this is what we think about masks, vaccines, or whatever, social distancing. 50-50, we're going to go with this. Maybe next week we'll change our mind.
That was the worst thing they did, is the fact that the best available evidence, no one ever used those terms, but it's hard to engender trust, and you preface everything with the best available evidence up until now, and then people go, well, what's that supposed to mean?
I think there's some hope there because when we grew up in polling results were not given with uncertainties in what they are. Right. And it's given up. And I was like, right. And that was plus or minus 3 points. Right. So that was an important achievement, I think.
You'll hear people say things like my priors were this, and I changed my upgraded my priors to my greens. That's a whole Bayesian area of statistics that people have no idea what they're actually saying, but they've inculcated it from just pop culture. And this is a good thing. Like, it's okay if I change my mind.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think that's very important to give people the leeway to say, it's okay if I'm wrong. The best thing I like about science, it is hands down the number one thing since I've been working with Neil for all these years. The thing that I appreciate the most is information that has changed. And better information has come along. And nobody, the world, the science world is not set on fire. Like,
Now, what proviso on that is that just because that idea is wrong, that one is wrong. My idea is surely right, even though you think I'm wrong. I'm one of the heirs, and I'm Galileo. Right.
So, does AI help this exercise?
It's a tool. I don't know. It's a useful tool.
In the search for truth.
Yes, but you got to check the sites, the sources they cite. Some of the sources they're hallucinating. They're not real. But if you click on the link, it's like that actual article doesn't actually exist.
With respect to Jeffrey Nichols, some AI does have
He said that the hallucinations that we all know with that is a hallucination. It's not fabrications.
confabulations, that's what
Yes.
That's good because we do that.
That's why he calls it that. We have fragmented memories of things that we fill it in so that the narrative can make sense to us.
Reagan famously remembered things from movies he was in that actually happened, that he thought actually happened. It's like, no, that was a movie you did in the 50s.
So back to the points. So bias, people are believing that even though they know it's wrong,
Is that true? Oh, sorry.
and I came across a phrase, I'm not sure if it's yours, it is, it's like this, a servant.
That's not my phrase, but I like it. And I mean,
What's it mean? What's it mean?
well, so when people publicly single, like the example I use in the book is, asking undergraduates to accept Darwin's theory of evolution. Oh yeah, so explain it. Well, they can't. The giraffe stretches its neck and the baby giraffes have like, no, that's not it. So they're publicly signaling, yeah, the scientists tell us this is true, so I did probably this. And it's a lot of conspiracy theory proclamations. Yeah, I think QAnon is real. The Pizzagate thing. I mean, if you really think about it, this cannot possibly be true. But what they're signaling is, my side says this is a conspiracy theory, and I do know there's bad things that happen. Those Democrats, they're up to no good. I don't know if Hillary actually, did this at this pizza place.
She did something.
She did something. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Nobody's guilty. Find it. Find out what she do.
I call it the past interference syndrome. If you're put into a team that the call was made against, it's not passive. If you're made for the team that the call is made for, well, it's definitely passive interference. So you actually see it that way.
And these measures, let's back up a moment just to get the vocabulary established. You refer to Bayesian reasoning. Could you just say something about that?
So that's Reverend Thomas Bayes' business, kind of statistical methods of when you should change your mind when the evidence changes. So you start with, here is what I think is true based on the following points of evidence. Now, if those change, I may change my credence. That is my belief, my confidence that this thing is true. And it's just an influx constantly changing. This allows you to not be so committed to the belief that I have to defend it, like it's my territory and it's under attack. Rather, it's maybe true, maybe it's false, I don't know. This is my confidence level now. Let's go.
So it's more fluid.
It's more fluid.
It's more fluid tracking.
So is there like a truth that is fixed on the
Not in science. I mean, if it's a religious truth, this is what we believe. All right, so I'm trying this out in the book that a lot of religious truths are actually more like literary truths. They're just stories that have deeper meaning behind them, like great literature. The Jane Austen novel or Dostoevsky novel. Is there really a Middle Earth somewhere on the planet from J.R.R. Tolkien's? Maybe it's in New Zealand.
But you make a really good point where you don't approach fiction declaring that it's false. That's not the operative way to think about it. You approach fiction as a source of lessons, parables, ways of living, a moral compass to come out of it. And so that's why I've never liked it when people say, is this fact or is it fiction? Because that equates fiction with being false. And I'd rather fictional literature not be thought of as truthful, the same as mythology. Just is there a lesson? So don't pick up where you go.
Yeah, so like the story of Jonah in the whale of the great fish. Did he really live for 3 days in the belly of the great fish? Then spit him out of this other land where he goes to the message to these other people. Okay? You're missing the point of that story. It's not, how do you live inside a fish for 3 days? The 3 days is very symbolic. And most Christians, when of course I don't know, it's part of it, but there's a deeper truth. Okay, how about the resurrection? Maybe that didn't actually literally happen, but it's a story about redemption. Starting over, they go, hang on, time out.
I'm a red card,
You're messing with the whole foundation here now.
Well, I think, people said this article is skeptic. Oh, that was caused by an earthquake, or this tsunami, or this volcano. Maybe it didn't happen at all, and it's just a story. And in the case of Jesus, there are people that think, well, this is called the swoon theory, that he wasn't actually dead on the cross, he just fainted. That's what. And then they put him in the cold cave that preserved him for a couple of days, and he woke up. And then he went with Mary Magdalene, they probably went from dead around, they moved to France, had kids. Again, most Christians go, no, it has to literally happen. Why do they insist it literally happen? I think part of the reason is that we believe in science where your core beliefs should have some foundation in evidence. To which I say,
science.
Yes, I think books are
You're always swapping out the lenses for a different subject matter. That's what I did later. You look at religion, stories, one lens into politics or something else. One reason at the beginning of the show, we see them totally through a totally different lens. Many more skeptical than other skeptical.
Well, this is my point. Use the right lens to look at this thing. Read biblical stories as literature rather than as empirical claims.
Absolutely. But, unfortunately,
I'm just saying.
Started on a track here about
He say no to that.
yes,
So what that is that
Okay, sir, I'm gonna say anything. I'm really embarrassed to admit this now. What the hell's a post truth mean? What does it mean?
this is what I asked. Yeah, this is what I'm asking. What does that even mean?
He's got a book. He's got a book.
Well, what it's supposed to mean from the kind of postmodernism and all that stuff in the 80s and 90s is that the old model was that there is an objective reality that we can discover through science. The new reality is that science is just another narrative story that people tell, and it's no better or different than any other story. So the Aboriginals, Australian stories about the origins of life and so on is just as good as the scientists. And so what we're pushing back against that is saying, no, they're not equal. And so that would be post-truth, that there's no truth to be found. But when you actually read postmodernists, they're making an argument. They're going, here's our evidence for it. It's like, that's not a post-truth. You're making an argument. And so you're on the page with me. I'm like, all right, let's see what you know. See what they know.
That's when you get the thing about segments of society, the East, the West, whatever, just different truth. Well, it's just too true.
Well, some people have, yes. I mean, that was kind of Steve Bannon's famous line. Trump was just flood the system so different that we'll tell them what's true. They won't know what the thing is.
Yeah, she said.
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah. This was like,
He's a great guy, I gotta tell you.
Something special. I was on a real time team.
Steve, man, he seemed pretty okay. That's the problem.
was that the truth of the matter? That's right. The devil is very
That's the disturbing.
So, can you give me a short list of the kind of biases we should look out for?
That's what I did. Check the evidence there. Well, so obviously the big one motivating reasoning, again, world is designed to look for and find evidence you want to be true. Well, designed by evolution. Look at that. There's one theory that reasoning does not define further truth. It's actually out there, but two people it's worse. That's one thing. Now, we have to have some capacity to understand what the world's actually like in order to survive. So there's some probably balance there. But the idea is that we're going to win the argument part. That's the hindsight bias. The hindsight bias, you know, after the fact, and look back at how things unfolded, you go, oh, it obviously had to be with them. My life had to come on what about that way that's not going to happen. In fact, most of it's just random, and we're not good at detecting randomness. You know, and here is the stars in the sky that are clustered. That's what randomness looks like. My favorite story from Steve Jobs is the iPod shuffle feature that randomly played your songs. That's what we played. And people complained and said, certain songs come up more than others. It's not random. It's like, no, that is what randomness looks like. So they had to program it to be less random so people can get into the program.
It's every song before that.
That isn't random. It's not random at all. That's like throwing the die and getting all the numbers. First.
Or cancer clusters. Oh, look, there's a community here. We gotta look to see if there's any industrial waste stuff there. Some company.
So they find the cancer cluster first.
Yes.
Then they look for one deposit.
But there's other clusters where there's no cancer at all in this community, and no one goes in there to see, let's see what they're doing right. Because they ignore those misses, right? So that's one of the things that epidemiology, they have these tools like we have to use.
No cancer.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
No one's
They're just like, well, these people are healthy.
This is not even a name. This is not even a name. That's correct.
So what kind of bias is that?
Well, that's just the, I call it patternism. It tends to find meaningful patterns of random noise. Most of it is just random.
Right. Like
you take a piece of toast. The Virgin Mary and the yeah, right.
Good at that. But for reasons that I think are plausible, shoes.
Yeah, so right, yeah. So you hear rustle in the grass is a dangerous predator, just the wind. So if you think that the rustle in the grass is a dangerous predator, it turns out it's just the wind. And that's just a false positive, no big deal. You just decide. But if you make the other kind of error, in which you assume the rustle in the grass it's just the wind. It's a dangerous predator, and you get a garland. Taking yourself out of the team early, maybe that was the most. So we tend to assume the worst. We tend to assume we this really is really just the case. Same thing with conspiracy theories. You know, most of them are not true. Some of them might be. Maybe it's better to err on the side that they really are after me. Even if they're not after me, they might be. So I better be cautious.
It's funny that you say that because I have talked, I do a lot of work in climate. And one of the things I say is everybody loves conspiracy theories, except for one conspiracy theory that's in front of everyone. And that is a small group of companies got together and decided that at all costs possible, they were going to make sure that we dig stuff out of the ground and burn it full well knowing since 1950 whatever that it would destroy our planet. Now that's a conspiracy! But you straight up the people are like, dude, get the hell out of here. And
I'll say thing with tobacco, big tobacco. They knew tobacco. They knew
the deal. That's a conspiracy. But these conspiracies, they're not sexy. They don't have aliens. And so nobody cares.
I mean, the Illuminati, these 12 guys running, but there are 12 CEOs of tobacco. And, right, they had meetings. We had their memo.
Yes.
And they
knew the deal, and millions of people died. But yet somehow that's not a conspiracy.
they're the ones that's the phrase, the jury is not in it, the science is not settled. We haven't seen. That's what we get.
Everybody, there's no such settled science. The people I've spoken with who invoke that term, the way they bring it to the table is there are these two research papers that are opposite and run for the country. And so therefore, it sells myself without realizing that there's always going to be outlier research papers. Right? And so
Especially when they're paid for by people. People want a different answer.
So tell me about the notion of consensus. I think if you look up the definition, it refers to opinion. Consensus and opinions. And in science, when we speak of consensus, it's the agreement of experiments and observations. So how has that worked for you when you invoke it?
Well, in science, yeah, we have to define that. I mean, it's the consensus of the experts that have been fighting each other for decades about whether this hypothesis or theory is true or not. By the time we consume it, they've already hashed out all the problems. This is what we think is probably true. But that's what 97% of climate scientists say X. What about the 3%? Maybe they're right. Maybe probably not.
Yeah, Mr. Exxon and Mr. Shell. And then that's three scientists. Mr. BP, Mr. Exxon, and Mr. Shell.
I mean, you must get these papers. I've been working in my garage here, and I think Einstein was wrong, and Newton was wrong, and Martin was wrong, and I got the theory, but we'll share the Nobel Prize with me, help me with the math. I mean, you get these. Okay, so how do you know that guy's not right? I mean, it could be. Maybe all these others are. Probably not, right? Because usually the outsiders, the heretics, and so on, it could be Galileos. They're not going to be just right.
So if we take a holistic view, I mean, look at the different elements of the truth, my truth, what is truth? What is society?
I mean, we can't run a society in which there's not some agreeable reality. Like money. I mean, money, it's fiat money. This is ink on paper. It's not valued at all by itself. But with a structure behind it that says we value it at this level and we can back it up. And so we all have to agree to that. And then once we do that, that becomes the reality underneath it.
That means we have the power to create truth.
In that sense, yes. So political truths are a little different than others. Well, so in a way, a democratic election is a kind of experiment. What's the right percentage of immigration a country should have? 0. No, right.
That's a vast difference. Or my wife, or my that's right. And the FBI is that all with parents, immigrants.
So we run an election. That's an experiment. Okay. These people are now in power. They're going to set it in here. We'll see how that goes. And then maybe the public goes, we don't like that. We're going to bring in the other team. They're going to do something different. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think they did. Well, so you talk about looking at that when you run on money, okay? It's not just the trust that it's valuable. It also behaves as if it were valuable. Which is why we then continue to put more trust
So, for instance, if we had runaway inflation, right, our dollar would become worthless, and we would stop trusting it. Therefore, it would not be of value. So, the levers that we're pulling to keep the dollar as a viable world currency is the thing that gives us trust. Therefore, it really does have value.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's why the government implemented the FDIC, guaranteeing a certain level of money in the bank, even if you think it's not really there. You don't have to let it run. That's all based on exactly what it is. And a bank run is people just don't trust that the money is in the bank, and if it's actually out of the bank, then it's out in the loan. So there's too many people go to the bank.
It's a warehouse. It's a warehouse.
Cosmic curiosity. We have access to our exclusive question website. Those are where we draw our questions from.
Some of the most extreme objects in the universe.
Star Talk is a perfect environment. If we know to learn something new idea, understanding about how to develop Thank you. And as always,
All the tools disinterest in truth.
Well, I think there's an incentive to say that. I think people actually still want to know.
Are they extend tools?
By political groups, religious groups, whatever. Yeah, divisive. Yeah, that's happening. Probably more than before, but it's hard to say. It just be elevated because of social media. It just becomes so prominent so quickly. In real time, you can see what's happening on X or whatever, where people's attitudes are. I doubt this or I doubt that. I mean, just like the ice shooting of Brittany Good, right? So you have the exact same video clip. You go to Fox News, and you can clearly see here she's trying to run over the agent. You go over to CNN, you can clearly see here she's trying to escape the agent and not cause a problem. We're looking at the same video, so even the video evidence is not going to be enough.
We fail to connect to speed social media. We've been struggling more with social
I
media.
don't know, think that collapses, so do I don't know if it's going to happen.
yeah, because it's feeding you. You know, it's an outrage engine. But let me ask you a different question. You are doing the bidding of science, and scientists, and you yourself are not a scientist. What is your disappointment?
So, I am a historian of science.
That's important. That's important. Yeah, that's your background in the history of science. So my question is, why aren't more scientists doing exactly what you're doing? Why are you doing the bidding of scientists?
Well, they're too busy working in labs and actually doing real research. That's their
Because when you say it's exactly what's going on, at the scientific community doesn't articulate it. We're not trained to articulate it in our branch.
Let's keep this. I'm often accused of defending the orthodoxy. Where's your? I thought you were a skeptic. Why are you skeptical of whatever their pet peeve is about science? Well, because of the consensus thing. I trust the expert. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe you're right with your theory about vaccines and the Big Bang or whatever. But probably not. And so I really just what I'm expressing is the system works pretty well most of the time. And even when there's a mistake made and there's a correction, oh, that theory turned out not to be right, or this or that, accelerating, expanding universe, all that stuff. But that wasn't scientists just being wrong. It was scientists correcting updating, upgrading our priors and so on, and finding new evidence. That's how it works. So even the worst mistakes in the history of science that, like creationists point out, built down man, they got that one wrong, and they got that muscle one. Yeah, but the mistakes were made and discovered by scientists.
Right. But it wasn't the journalists finding
That's right, yes.
Scientists found their own mistakes.
And even though
The
that's the
system is built to do that.
That's right.
So now unpack our understanding of the word skeptic. Because I've heard people say, I'm just being skeptical of what the scientists are telling you. Isn't that a healthy posture? At what point do you say, one of the skeptics organizations, if not yours, have the rich. Had a button. The button just said, I doubt it.
Oh yeah, that was Joe Rogan.
No, and I'm just saying, no. Being a skeptic means you know at which point you no longer need to doubt it. And so where does that training come in? Because a lot of the people who are skeptical of vaccines, skeptical of masks, skeptical of any emergent scientific objective truth, they're just being skeptical. How could you fall into the How do you take us out?
Well, so at the beginning of
Just ask the questions.
I know that's very dangerous because they're usually not just asking questions. Maybe this man. So we start in science. We start with a null hypothesis. Your hypothesis is probably the truth. Now, go ahead and give us your best evidence. I think ivermectin will, cure the issue with COVID-19. That's nice. Okay. Do you have any evidence for this? Well, my aunt tried it and she got better. Sorry, in medicine, the anecdote is not data. We have to have controlled trials and epidemiological studies and so on and so forth.
General of an anecdote is not data.
That's right. I think Bigfoot's real. Okay, but it could be. Maybe there's another bipedal primate running around out there in Canada or the Himalayas. Show us the body. And if they do, okay, then it's real. But if not, then I'm going to remain skeptical until I see that evidence. It's completely reasonable. All people should be scientists. So there's nothing special about science and skepticism in that regard. We should all be skeptical to start, but then be willing to say, okay, I think that one's wrong.
So there's some people who believe they're nobly skeptic and don't know that boundary between when the skepticism is healthy and when it's just wrong to be skeptical.
Yeah, there are people that are just sort of contrarian by nature. I'm just going to doubt everything just because.
So I don't believe anything anymore than skepticism. The line's quite low, I think.
Back in the 90s when postmodernism was big, there is no real truth, is it? So the claim that the Holocaust never happened is as good as your claim that it is. Well, no, okay, I'm not saying that. Like, oh, okay, so there is a way to find out. So it's true. Yeah, I guess so.
But catch yourself on this. And I want to go unresolved because the 90s was 30 years ago. Okay?
What?
That can't be. You're just making a laugh now.
30 years ago. Oh my God. 30 years ago from the 1960s. So, this postmodern was led in academia by the liberal arts. Could you just remind us about that?
Humanities, the literature, the grit, and all that stuff. Deconstructing the text. What did the author really mean when they said this? And we can't know because they're gone, whatever. Okay, so it kind of came out of that. And then, so we're examining narrative. Well, science is a narrative. It's a story. And then it became, it's just a story. It's just another story. There's nothing special about it.
No better or worse than anybody else's story.
And then you got wrapped up in the whole, well, it's the Western, industrialized, capitalist, white, male.
Okay, but that was pretty strongly seated in academia. When did it spill out into the public?
Well, it began probably in the 90s. Just like any kind of claim that anybody makes, you should doubt it just because it came from a white guy or it came from, an academy where this capitalist, whatever, funding and that kind of thing.
Okay, what's the health of it today?
Well, it's still around, but I think it's been challenged. I mean, to be fair, on the right, there's also the kind of fake news, alternative facts, all this stuff. You can't trust the media.
Oh, because the postmodernism was a leftist.
That was a leftist. There's one on the right, too. Yes. And again, one reason is that we have to get back to trusting experts. Expertise does matter, definitely. Even if they occasionally get it wrong, that's fine.
Here's what kids do. They may sometimes get it wrong, but your dumbass always gets it wrong.
That should be a post.
That's it. That's it.
And my other people who say, I did my research by spending an hour reviewing YouTube. When a scientist says, I did my research, it's everything.
Yeah, so I like independent journalism. I think it's a good directive for some of the errors in mainstream. But most of those people don't have fact checkers support it. So they also get it wrong. I just did an op-ed piece for the Washington Post. It was just 700 words, excerpt from the book. 4 people went through. I mean, it took like 4 days, and I had to provide a link for every single sentence. And I was to the point I was getting irritated. I'm like, I actually, this is a good thing. There's people checking me because I know when I'm just posted on some website that there's nobody fact-checking.
So let me ask you this, and I think I'm opening up a Pandora's box here right now, but I don't care. I gotta do it because it's just so important in this country right now. After almost officially eradicating measles, we now are at a 35-year high for measles outbreak, and there is a direct correlation between the number of people who are not vaccinated and the increase in the cases of measles. What do you say to someone who is listening to voices that says vaccines like they're harmful to your children? There are clearly cases where people have died because they've been vaccinated. All the things that they put together. How do we talk to someone?
Well, you have to ask questions first when you heard that, on Carlson or Rogan or whatever. I was listening to RFKJ talk about that. Those sort of, you have to counter false information. So, I mean, there are people that are hurt by vaccines. That does happen. You give 1 billion people something with a 0.0001% side effect, you're going to get some. So you have to counter it with data. This is the answer. What's the harm of people just being skeptical? Whatever. Well, some people won't get vaccinated, and then they'll get measles, things like that. That's unfortunate. I mean, RFKJ, some of the stuff, we should eat healthier. Yeah.
No boy.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, liberals were overcheating anti-vaxxers.
Yes. Right.
It only crossed over really fast to become purple.
Yes.
And it became mixed in with the freedom. Yeah, the government. So I can't tell you, but the right has never really been anti-farm.
No, they're fine with farm products. They get money. But some liberals are like, big farm making money on vaccines, so maybe the vaccines are better. No.
We've got just a couple minutes left here. Have you found anything other than science that has access to certificates?
By accident, it's called
Maybe some of this.
There it is. Well, I mean, they may get there by accident. I mean, some of the claims about religion, about how we should live our lives, ought to be good. We should treat others like you would want to be treated. You can graft a game theory model with that. But yeah, that actually is good. Okay, they got that through experience, trial and error, without years. Okay. So yeah, some institutions they can get it right without actually testing. Science is so new, right? We've been bumbling around for thousands of years, getting some things right, but we're making progress.
That's quickly and
slowly. Moral progress happens on a decadal level. You have to just slow it up. You don't quite notice how it happened, and then you look back to the 90s.
Such things are wrong.
I think so. Yes.
So, this is published by Johns Hopkins University Press. And how many of your books have been with them?
2, Conspiracy and this one. Yeah, they're good. Yes, they fact check. They do a lot of fact checking.
Is this out now?
Yeah, just came out.
Okay. Yeah. So, what are you working on now? And how do we find you on social media?
Skeptic.com, michaelschreiber.com, on Twitter, X, at Michael Schreiber. SHU.
So Michael Schreiber is the king.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Skeptic is skeptic.
And you post on some frequency.
I do. Yeah. I can ask for popular.
Do you have a TikTok account?
I should be. Not even on Instagram. I mean, I'm so old school. I'm older than you. I'm over. Yeah.
All right, Michael, take us out with some.
Oh, well, again, I think there is an objective truth to that. I think we're able to find it provisionally, and that our brains are smart enough to figure out what's really going on and understand reality, even if it's error-prone. We do it better than other species.
So take out this.
I think my ultimate chapter is on, at some point, we could become equivalent of omniscient beings. That is, if there's a God, we could become our future. Or the aliens, if we discover them, they'll be so far advanced that they'll appear to be omniscient. And that's the closest we can get to it. Maybe our future's results for the aliens.
All right, dude. And Chuck, we still got you on our YouTube channel.
Well, that's just smart enough. Thank you, sir. Chuck Nice, just smart enough. Look it up and watch it on YouTube, guys.
All right, Michael Sherman, go ahead.
Thank you.
This Star Talk special edition. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, astrophysicist.
Tell me how you feel about your parents.
What else can we measure light? It's how evidence. We measure its color, but we learn that light is also made of particles, and we gave a name to those particles, photons. And depending on how you measure it, it can manifest as a particle or as a wave. It's the same thing. Our brain just can't handle the truth. That is simultaneously a particle and a wave.
I don't blame us.
Back in the day, they tried to erase the word laboratory. Apparently, so did everybody else.
Yeah.
So, if there's a wavelength, what happens if I change the wavelength? Which is color. Okay. So, color and wavelength, what do you get? There's only one wavelength. So now let's talk about something else for real. When we tried to harness electricity, a lot of early people had that. Don't say Ben Frank, Ben Frank. He published a book. Yeah, called Experimental Researches into Electricity.
Do it, you pimp.
I love you. Ben Frank. It was read all throughout Europe.
Yes.
We think of it just as early as
Gentlemen, scientists, people from Europe.
This electricity, what is it? How does it? We have only discovered electrons for 80 more years, right? So, what carries it? What causes it? What's the fact? Then we found magnitude. This is what started our Einstein, right? This quest to learn physics. Interesting that a magnet can influence distance without actually touching it. It's there. Something that was there, how, where, why. Okay? And Michael Faraday, mid-19th century physicist, didn't know much math, but he was highly insightful. Yeah, I didn't know that about him. There's no equations in any of it. Hard game.
Oh my God, there's smoke for me.
But he had a very deep, intuitive sense of what was going on. We credit the invention, the idea of a field to magnetic field. And then he saw that you could have an electric field. And when you do something with one, it affects the other. If I take a wire, pass it through a magnetic field, current shifts up. Electrons move through the wire. You know how to measure it, right? And that money today will be called amp chips. Right. You take a wire, put it through the magnet. The ammeter does this. So I use the magnetic field. These were two separate processes until you see they connected. If one can hook up and vice versa, they make the two something the same. At that point, we will call the electromagnetic core.
You got magnets as your mind. You got electricity and my magnets. They're two great things to go together.
That's you.
So I got a cool fact to just sort of shoehorn in the middle of all this. Okay. When you look at a apple, and then it's a red, you say, that apple is red. That is well in the past the experience. It's only red because white light hit red. And white light had which color is it? What did she do? It has all its colors on it. But to you, it's red. So how am I saying red? Because white light is in all colors. The apple is absorbing orange, yellow, green, and the white. Red is the only color that it isn't. It is bouncing that back. They say that apple is red, but it absorbs all the other colors. So it's our language references our reference. We say it is red, but that is the only color. It's for anything that's like a color that has a black. And if the apple is white, it reflects all the colors. That's the white light.
I'm not rejecting it. You're all y'all will work for me.
What happens if the object absorbs all colors?
It's gotta be white. Oh no! What's up, my brother? Yo, see, man.
It absorbs all the colors.
Nothing comes back. That is black. You can't be black without being white. That's not what I said. Basically, no matter what, we are all white. I hate to say it, but it's true. Oh man, what? Martin Luther King had it wrong. He had a dream, but it was the wrong dream. I have a dream that one day, black, red, yellow, brown, we'll all be white.
William Herschel. Yes. He answers the question. He had Newton's spectrum on the table. The light coming from the curtain. Anyone hit a wire on the different temperatures of each part. So he took his thermometer, put it in the spectrum, in the control thermometer, and put that to the side. The one that's not touched by any of these colors. So it went right to the side of the curtain. Nothing's touching that. Then checks the temperature. Red, yellow, green, black, and in every case, the thermometer that read the highest temperature was the control thermometer.
That's exactly.
And so that's all. So then it took the control thermometer, put it somewhere else, and they do it. And then he publishes a paper. I have a copy of this paper. And I hear angels every time I think, it is the discovery of light unfit for precision. That's what he called it. So that was the discovery of that we get from infrared, right? Infrared. So then we're off to the races. What else is there? What else is there? It would take, and you would discover other bands of light that are very different times. Because you need special detectors for it. The thermometer is a detector of infrared. But is your thermometer a detector of microwaves? Not so much. No. Is your thermometer a detector of ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays? Not so much. All right. So the detector has to be able to absorb the light and somehow record what that is. Then it adjusts. Thermometers absorb infrared. There it was. So going forward from there, that was the 1700s into 1800s, 1900s, into 2000s. We are appending the rules of the electromagnetic spectrum to what we only ever was.
That's
Go fast. Yes. So this one, let's go to the red side. So beyond red, we have infrared, a sensible name. Infrared. Beyond infrared, physicists got in there first. They just called it all radio. These are bigger wavelengths than visible light. In fact, it's so big, you can like draw it on a page. Okay? So the smaller radio waves are between like a millimeter and a few centimeters. You can draw these. That's okay. So for the challenge out there, fraction of an inch to about an inch. Okay? Those are small waves. Right? The bigger waves are the size of a meter. Okay? They're feet long. The original TV, like the gravity or antenna, yes, receive long wavelength radio waves with the same length as your antenna.
Just buy it to grab it out of the air and I'll get a reception.
Grab it out of the air. If you wanted, for these radio waves, if you want to detect them, you need a receiver. You need an antenna about the same size as the radio.
That's really
Good. And it really
that's really
okay. So
that's why they had to be telescope.
and depending on what your frequency was,
Yeah. And that's why sometimes people don't get receptacles. But they still have these gatherings and
the unique part of the antenna
part of the antenna is like
it's like the shorter radio wavelengths with excellent for communication because you can have more information the smaller the wavelength is. As you got to shorter and shorter radio waves, we came up with microwaves. Micro, the unit micro is really small, they're just small radio. Right, this is a thing they don't like. We later learned by accident in the 20th century that microwaves and water molecule, they got to think of, oh, nice. Hey, water molecule loves to have shorter being microwaves. And hitting certain frequencies with the others. If you have a wavelength, which I've been describing, right? Meters long. The meters are much, much smaller and visible harder. How fast is all this moving? It's all radio waves, microwaves, and infrared. It's all microwaves. I mean, the speed of light. So watch. I have a wavelength this big going by me at the speed of light. Right? And I have a clock. I'm saying how many crests go by this? That's the real lesson.
right, this is like it's going to get more crescent.
Higher frequency. Higher frequency. Yes. Okay. So the shorter the wavelength, so the wavelength and the frequency go opposite inverse relations. Essentially, okay. As one goes up by a factor two, the other charge because they're multiplied by each other. To keep the speed.
So they're always in perfect balance. What is that? Oh man, that's really cool.
That works. Okay, so now we learned that microwaves are absorbed by water. Okay, water is a major food additive. So if you think about it, I don't know that much of anything you eat that water can okay. But some other molecules are absorbed, but water does best. And I'm told, I didn't verify this, but there were microwaves in a lab, MIT somewhere, and somebody walked in front of a microwave unit, and you checked his pocket, chocolate bar. Oh, really? And he said, oh, man. Then they did experiments, and it showed it very efficient. Now, you don't want to really need to be in a microwave, because it'll get in your skin, and there's a lot of water in your body. It'll start eating you up, okay? You want to look in, pictures, you put them in your body, starting boiling fast. And by the way, microwaves pass through others. That's the little so, how else do you have microwave ovens with glass doors?
But like we know, there are science out with their utensils.
That is the energy of the ultraviolet light. It's absorbed by molecules that then brings the particle of life. So it's possible for us. If you go beyond ultraviolet, we get to X-rays. And then gamma rays. And that is the entire main electromagnetic spectrum.
Is it possible there could be something above gamma rays?
Sure, but we still call this all gamma. It's gamma rays all the way down. Yeah.
Unless they're really specific.
Just make numbers, and we can divide it up.
If it does exist, we have nothing.
Exactly. The visible part of the spectrum.
Yes.
We are practically on the spectrum. We like listening to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in one octave play.
That's not very interesting. That doesn't sound very good. I don't want to hear that on the radio.
Right, exactly. It's not right. Yeah, that's just right. Right. So the richness of the electromagnetic spectrum is limited to us by objects of phenomena is molecule.
Yes. And by the way, when I first saw Star Trek Next Generation, and I saw just one of the footage, I was like, now, of course, they're going to mess with the black man. He can't even see. He's walking around with a visor, like the grill of a Cadillac on his face. And how messed up was that until I found out that his visor could see every part of the spectrum. Right.
I'm going to see everything.
He can see everything.
Yeah. You want to see it all at once. You want to be able to tune it. Otherwise, it's easy to tune it to, for example, to microwaves. Then everyone's cell phone will be lit up. All the cell phone towers will be lit up. Hey, you can talk to somebody.
Conversations in the air.
But you have to be where they are. Where it's right. When you see something coming at you, you actually don't even see anything. Okay? Because that means you'll be able to see it before the speed of light got to it.
Oh, that's right. You can only see it on the visor.
On the right. Yeah. That's wait. Photons. And all these are photons.
Yes.
And depending how you measure it, it'll be a wave or a particle, this duality, and I don't know whatever I looked at. That's what radio telescopes.
Yes.
If your wavelength is this big, the shape of your dish doesn't have to be, you can have like say, because the wave doesn't know. It's smaller than it. Oh, electrons.
Yes.
You can warm up electrons so that they have a wavelength equal to X-rays. Wave particle. Okay? Like that's how X-rays are generated. The X-rays you see in the hospital. Okay? There's electrons. You know what? But it's not. Go ahead. All right, go ahead. If I want to see detail in the microscope, then I can see, there's the camera missing, and the reason why I can see it is I'm using a digital light, which is a wavelength much smaller than we're looking at. Much smaller. So many wavelengths of light span the thing I'm looking at, so I can get detail commensurate with the wavelength of light I'm using. Now suppose it is here. I'm not going to see it. If my waves in the microscope are bigger than the thing that I'm observing. But do you know what a smaller wavelength than visible light? Oh, X-ray. That's right. Of course. So I make a scanning electron microscope that uses X-rays to give us the option. And X-rays are way smaller wavelengths. And then you can see detail on a magic at the regular microscopes because it's one part of the thing that you're observing. And then and multiple wavelengths can flesh that out, right? And you can see things that are together and make a picture. So the highest resolution pictures use the smallest wavelength. We are badass on this electromagnetic spectrum. And fundamentally, with us in modern civilization. Amazing. And you cannot imagine civilization without it. That's what we're doing. What? How would you not like science? We need to end this right now.